Well, we'll start off the comments. We did it last night, and I think we're going to go through the same process, pretty much asking for a 6 months extension because of the information that's just being released, and people are having a hard time accessing it. So we need to look at that information and be able to think it through and make our best decision before we advise you on some of our additional comments that may be coming forward because of that. So I would ask for that 6-month extension. And part of the whole problem here is stigmatizing the whole West Valley. West Valley is not where the site is located, it's in Ashford Hollow. And I made this comment last night that Charlie Davis, a good friend of mine, he loves his community, like we all do. And, it's hard for him to get any kind of development going there. We're all trying to provide services. That's my job here at the Seneca Nation, is all the services that we provide, all my members. It takes economic development, activity, revenue generating, and for Charlie to do that out there in Ashford Hollow and maintain his fire department, his water service, all that stuff, plowing the roads, just maintenance, garbage pickup, all these things cost money, and it's hard for him to get any kind of activity out there with this stigmatizing of his whole community, even our communities, all of this. If you live on Earth, you need to be concerned because it involves everybody. And the other part is demanding a full cleanup. All this other alternative stuff, we've talked about this outside of our task force meetings, that we're doing all these probability assessments and kind of spinning the wheel. When the actual action plan should be full cleanup and move from there. We could be using that money on these assessments towards starting the planning of how we're going to do this, because it's going to take a lot. It's going to take more than everyone thinks they're going to go in there and dig it up. I was mentioning the Ross, they show the trenches in there. I don't know how deep those trenches are, 30 feet, I have to say, and straight walls. They don't do that anymore. That would be illegal nowadays for someone to dig a trench like that, just because of the danger. You got to bench it back. And to go in there and remove that, you're going to have to bench it back. I talked a little bit with Ray Vaughn about building a wall at the end by the Cattaraugus Creek, because there's not an accident now, but accidents happen, especially during construction projects. I come from a construction background, and we would need that containment wall there to capture anything just in case of an accident. We got to plan. That's planning right there, and to build a wall that I think would facilitate that site. You're probably looking at $1 million right there, and or more. That would be the cost of the wall. It's going to cost for the people to go in there and build it. So all along, we've talked about it, and I've always demanded more funding for the site, and we all have to do that. It's all of our responsibility to talk to our congressmen and senators, like I mentioned earlier. We need to go down there and raise your voice to whoever's going to listen. Could even be the congressman's wife or senator's husband or whoever it is, whoever you have a contact with. You need to say, we need more funding for this, because without funding, none of this is going to happen. And we can give direction to these guys, but they only follow the direction of their boss. And these departments here, the DOE, NRC, I go to them and I say, how come you're not lobbying? And they can't. It depends on us, going to our representatives in Congress and the Senate and doing it that way. Even changing I was listening in the West Valley Development Project Act is a law, and they need to follow that law, and that calls for complete removal from the site of all the radioactive material. So we have to do that and let them know that even changing it from commercial waste to defense waste, that's going to take an act of legislation there too. So we've been lobbying for that. We did that through our Citizens Task Force, saying that we all approve that reclassifying that radioactive material to defense waste is where we need to be to get it out of there. Have a site for it to go, because a lot of the defense sites will not accept commercial waste. So we got to keep that in mind too, and have that on our lobbying plate for our representatives. You know, and I seen it in the comments made in the first session out in West Valley about having me being on that planning board for the approval process for the NEPA and the seeker. And I would accept that nomination because we need to be involved. We need more people sitting at that table where the planning is done. You know, and, you know, funding, timing of this whole thing, you know, they have good timelines on here, but, you know, the full cleanup of this thing is gonna take a long time. Dangerous work. I hope no one gets hurt. You know, but I've been on jobs that are less stressful than that, and people get killed, you know, just from accidents. So you gotta be very careful. I think in between all those things of funding, timing, safety's gotta be right there. And these guys have a good track record for safety, but there's new standards that we do things by today, and we have to follow them and follow them closely. I come from, I built reactors, nuclear reactors for General Dynamics, and you know, you can only go in there for a little while when you're working with high level radioactive waste, half an hour at the most, and I'll suit it up and dosimeters on, all that stuff. So you have to be careful and watch yourself, protect yourself. Going out to how we live as a people here, you know, it's affected our community. We have high level, you know, and a lot of people don't want to associate it, and it's hard. Radiation and cancer, that's not always the fix or the match right there. But we do have high incidence of cancer in the area. I'm from Bucktown, and everybody had cancer. And that's, you know, I have to give them a voice because I don't have one anymore. But I suffer from arthritis. You know, I learned to swim. My dad threw me in a creek. That's how I learned to swim. You know, we all did that, you know. Go down there, pick berries. We just had our first wild Indian soup about 2 weeks ago. We all do that. It's our seasonal diet that we always enjoy. You know, and I always relate to my gram because she had a little dementia. She was 98 when she passed away a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and she said, she told me, she said, I only know what time of the year it is by the gifts you bring me. And that's, you know, from the sassafras to the wild onions to the fish in the spring and the fall, all that stuff. It's all good, you know. We can only eat 8 ounces of fish every month, you know, from the creek, you know, and that's from other factors also. We had the glue factory, the tannery, all these things, you know, and our people, we named our territories after these waters. Here in, we're not even, you know, we call us Senecas, and we're not Senecas, we're Onondaga. And this creek out here, the Cattaraugus, it's Gadageska, you know, and that means it smells there. It's from the tributaries that lead into the Cattaraugus around here. I live up on the hill on Sulphur Spring Road, and you can smell it. On the other side is Burning Springs Road. And all these things lead in as tributaries to the creek. And that's why, you know, we love our creek, we love our community. And all these things have an effect on it. And, you know, all the autoimmune diseases that we suffer from because of it's a long-term exposure to low level of radiation. There's studies out for that say, you know, thyroid problems, diabetes, all these things. There's other contributing factors, and it's hard to connect those dots. But I'll connect it in these comments because it needs to be said. There's other sites out there where, you know, we're low on the list of where all these projects rank. They mentioned the Hanford site out in Washington, you know. One of my good friends, Billy Franks, was from out there. He got the Medal of Honor from President Obama for all the environmental work he did. I don't know, he got arrested, I don't know how many times, it was a record, like 70 times for environmental activism, you know, and but he was a good friend of mine. And when I first met him, I was at one of the meetings, and then O'Brien was out there out in Denver at another site, and I was acting up and I was teasing them, you know, I was talking about climate change and all this stuff, and asking for funding. Always, I don't know, Brian, every time I go out, I ask for funding for our projects, and it's hard when other people are more in, you know, harder straits than we are here. You know, that Hanford site is bad, and they they didn't protect the workers that were out there, and a lot of them are gone because of it. But where are we gonna put it, you know? We're shipping waste through here. There's waste going down to Savannah, Georgia from the Chalk River side up in Ontario. All these things are concerns, so they pass through here. And they only let you know if they're gonna come through here that day. Some of there's injunctions against some of that transportation of it. But these are all things that we need to be concerned about all the time. I know we have a lot of people here, I see them, and I know they went to North Dakota and were part of the DAPL movement, water protectors. You know, we've had issues here all our lives, and you know, we need to clean up our sites first. You know, we can help, we can support, but man, we have a problem here, and I demand a full cleanup of the site. You know, it affects our whole quality of life. There's things that have gone on, you know, at Kinzua Dam, all these things. And that was, you know, Aggie talked about it last night. That was her dad up there. He was the president at the time. When I was a boy, I knew him just as my coach, my baseball coach, my basketball coach. You know, but they were good men, and they tried their best fighting forces that were outside of their control. And we're all fighting that right now. It's a force outside our control that we need to get a hold of. And I know they allotted me a little more time than 5 minutes, but, you know, these guys are our friends here, you know, and we got to go to a higher level than these guys to give them the direction that we need to do to clean this place up, you know, in a full cleanup. That's what we need to do. Our grandchildren and their children's all depend on that, the decisions we make today. And I appreciate everyone coming out today. We all could have been somewhere else, but we're here and we're concerned. So now,
Yeah.
Thank you very much, President Gates. And now we're going to hear from Shannon Seneca.
Nice stand at the podium.
Yes, I was going to say that may be easier. And we have this microphone turned on. Okay.
So some people may be curious as to why I got the second position to talk. And I do work with the Seneca Nation and the Seneca Nation Health System, but the reason that I have been elevated is because I have a long history with West Valley. I have had the opportunity to perform my doctoral research on site in working with the remediation of the contaminant plume on the North Plateau. And I do second what Todd says, the president says, is that all of the people at West Valley, anybody that I've ever interacted with have been absolutely fantastic, genuine people to work with. And it's always been a great pleasure. And you know, the Seneca Nation has become more and more vocal about the protection of their waterways. And, you know, some people look at us and they say, well, okay, we understand you want to say you're the protectors of the environment. That's not really what's happening here. It is our responsibility as people, not just as Native peoples, to understand that there's a reciprocity that's necessary between us and our environment. Not only that, we have a responsibility to protect and preserve our environment for our future generations. When we speak, we are not speaking to protect and preserve the environment. What we're doing is we are speaking on behalf of those who cannot. That's not just our ancestors that have passed, but that's the waters, that's the soils, the trees, everything that's within our environment. And so I first want to say that I really enjoy the presentations that are given by the NYSERDA, by the Department of Energy. Everybody is very well spoken. The presentations are always extremely informative. The reason that I would like to ask for a 6-month extension is not simply because people need the opportunity to review the materials and review the reports, but I really feel that we need more information from the site, from the West Valley site, in order to make strong determinations. I do not think that the information that's been provided tonight is sufficient enough to make decisions. I would like to request that another public hearing be made, not only to provide people with more time and information, but to have a public hearing that's actually focused on what are these phase 2 decisions. I know that it was brought up quickly in one slide that the phase 2 decisions are the high-level waste tank farm, the NRC disposal area, the state license disposal area, the cesium prong, the non-source area, North Plateau groundwater plume, construction and demolition debris landfill, the balance of the Western New York Nuclear Service Center property, as well as the contaminated stream sediment. And what I would really like to see is that very last slide of Brian's presentation be the opening of the next presentation. Give us some more information about what is associated, what is contained within these disposal areas, what is the radioactive levels that are associated with the high-level waste tank farm. And I know the information is available. You know, we had the aerial surveys, we had the dose assessment report. All of this information is available, and if it could be presented to the community so they can make sound decisions. So not only do I request an extension to 6 months, but I also request an additional public hearing to provide more information on the phase 2 decisions. And so in terms of my personal, or my comment today, yes, of course, we would like to ask for site-wide removal. And why? Is it justifiable to leave the NRC disposal area closed in place since it is less radioactive than the high-level waste tank farm? Likewise, can the high-level waste tank farm be safely closed in place since it is less likely to erode into the waterway than the disposal areas? Additionally, is it adequate enough to remove the contaminated stream sediment and leave the cesium prong to naturally attenuate? These are all formed questions, but in my mind, the answer is no. Therefore, the scope of the supplemental environmental impact statement for the Western New York Nuclear Service Center should be focused on the prioritization of cleanup and removal to achieve full cleanup and the development of innovative technology to achieve unrestricted release. The only reason that I have even mentioned the prioritization of cleanup is simply because that the costs and funding issues are completely understood. It's understand that you're not going to be able to get $6 billion at once. But not only would we be happy to have the site have full cleanup, but you guys also get to keep your jobs and even provide jobs to future people beyond you. In terms of the potential impacts of alternatives, not only do you need to consider the future land use of the site, but I think great deal of consideration needs to be considered on the long-term regional impacts. Not just what is going to happen on site, what is the land use going to be on site, what is the potential threat to people on site, but what is the possibility of what could happen if there was an accidental release due to the erosion of a licensed disposal area. Right outside of Cattaraugus Creek, we run right into Lake Erie, and right upstream from the Seneca Nation, or directly north of the Seneca Nation, are the intakes for the Erie County Water Authority. The Erie County Water Authority may have even had effects due to the West Valley site because of releases of strontium-90, which have been permitted releases. That jeopardizes not only the Seneca Nation, but all of Western New York. And once it goes beyond Lake Erie, it also goes into Lake Ontario. The idea of the cesium-137 contaminated sediment and soil, which would be left in streams or in soil, or that has already migrated off-site, needs to discontinue. the threat of cesium, further contamination of cesium-137 through the transport of the creek system from Franks Creek and Erdman Brook through Buttermilk Creek into the Cattaraugus, which eventually flows into the Great Lakes systems. And one of my final comments I would like to make is, additionally, can we please include the Seneca Nation as a cooperating agency? NYSERDA and the Department of Energy have mentioned before that this is a very good possibility and something that they would like to see. So I would just like to make that official. And why? Why should the Seneca Nation be a cooperating agency? Not only has this community been dealing with this since the inception of the site, but it does have direct impacts on the community. Recently there was a soil survey done, and it was identified that there was cesium-137 contamination on site. These levels may have been deemed safe by the US government, but it has directly impacted the community. So I'm gonna step back for a second here, and in terms of my personal feelings about the Native peoples and the future of all, I think people need to return back to the environment. And people are scared. We can't let that happen anymore. We need to let them go back to the natural world. And by letting this idea of, well, let's decide what can be left on site and what can be left for it to perpetuate in the environment upstream from the Seneca Nation, a lot of these questions shouldn't even be explored. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shannon. And we're going to go into our regular 5-minute limit, and I'll give you a little signal when you're at 4 minutes, and we're going to start with Friar Judd. And I would ask all people, I think it's more convenient to just use this up here. Thank you.
My homilies usually go 12 to 15 minutes, so I'll rely on that 4-minute signal from you, okay?
Okay, I know you will.
I hope that my comments in no way contradict, but in fact build on what President Gates and what Shannon just said. I'm Father William Judd Weitzner. I'm a Franciscan friar and a priest. I'm pastor at St. Columba Bridget Church in Buffalo. And my comments are meant to provide an integral ecological context for the SEIS, i.e. that all of creation, human and non-human, share a common home. My educational background includes accounting, law, and policy studies, and while all of those areas could relate to this situation that we're facing at West Valley, I'm speaking tonight as a Franciscan, as a follower of St. Francis of Assisi. For 2 years, from 2015 to 17, I served on an international body, the Animation Committee for Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation, which is based in Rome, Italy. And I currently work with Franciscans, clergy, non-clergy, lay people throughout the United States on environmental issues. The Franciscan perspective on issues such as the disposal of nuclear waste comes from St. Francis. 800 years ago, he declared in song and in poetry that the sun is our brother, that the moon is our sister, the wind is our brother, the water is our sister, and the earth is our mother and sister. And modern day Franciscans would say in that context that the natural world is not a commodity for us to use and abuse for profit or convenience. And I think that Francis's worldview corresponds very well with those of our Seneca Nation hosts tonight and with Native peoples throughout the whole world. Pope Francis drew very heavily on Francis of Assisi's inspiration when he wrote an astounding document, Laudato Si', which was published in 2015, and it was given out to politicians, scientists, policymakers around the world, including EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. I hope he has read it. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it or received a copy of it. It's over 100 pages long. It calls for people of faith and all people of goodwill to care for our common home, which is the earth. Pope Francis, he relied on scientists, philosophers, theologians, civic groups to form what he called an integral ecology. And so he was open to the categories of chemistry and economics, but also called us to go beyond that, to take us to the heart of what it really means to be human and to work together as humans for the sustainable development that would guarantee the protection of our home, which we all share. Here in Western New York, I believe that if the planners and politicians in the 1960s had had an integral ecology, they never would have permitted nuclear fuel services to construct the facility at West Valley, which resulted in that enduring hazard that we live with today. I think it's incumbent on those who are making the decisions about the future of West Valley. I wish that the four of you, were at that higher end of the decision-making process, but I think it's incumbent on them to ensure that all the necessary measures be taken to ensure the safe disposition of the radioactive waste that's stored or buried there. That is to say, that waste should not be stored or buried in our Mother Earth. And they must eliminate the possibility of such waste contaminating our sister Cattaraugus Creek, and by extension, our sister Lake Erie, our sister the Niagara River, our sister Lake Ontario. Pope Francis called for a dialogue on how we're shaping the future of our planet. He called for a conversation which includes everyone, since we're all affected by the environmental challenges that we face. I thank you for inviting not just scientists and engineers, but members of the faith community to share our perspectives. And I urgently plead that there be as quick as possible and as thorough as possible a remedy for the waste at West Valley that threatens our Mother Earth and our sister water. That document, Laudato Si, ends with a prayer for the earth, a hope-filled declaration that our Creator does not leave us alone. Our Creator is united definitively to the earth, and our Creator's love constantly impels us to find new ways forward. And my hope and my prayer is that these hearings this week and all the rest of the process are filled with that same hope as we find a new way forward for West Valley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Warren. I'm speaking on behalf of Citizens Environmental Coalition. And the title is Environmental Impacts of Project Delays and DOE Mismanagement Should Be Studied in the SEIS. The SEIS should also address a plan for greater accountability in the future. I've sort of changed some of the order here, so I've written that out. I'll be handing this in. There have been major delays in Phase 1 projects, and the public has not received any explanation related to Phase 1 and when all these projects are likely to be finished. We'd like to have that in this EIS, although it seems to leave out all of the Phase 1 projects. A slide was shown of a lot of green grass over the entire North Plateau, but they didn't tell us what year that would be. Because the reality is we're going to have that transuranic waste sitting there if we don't have a plan to send it anywhere else. It's a big building there. In fact, it may get in the way of some of the other Phase 1 work. So the transuranics need to be dealt with, otherwise there'll still be a building there 20, 30 years from now. Some slides also indicate that new information and changes since the 2010 EIS will be discussed in the EIS. And so I'm suggesting here tonight that all of the Phase 1 projects, because it's new information since 2010, in terms of the delays, in terms of what hasn't happened, all of this needs to be updated in the EIS. What is done of Phase 1, what hasn't been done, when it's expected to be completed, the sampling data showing the current state of radiological and chemical contamination, along with a discussion of the environmental impacts associated with the various expected delays associated with the Phase 1 projects. We need to have the entire C&D, the construction and demolition landfill, dug up and removed prior to replacing the zeolite and the permeable treatment wall that's used for treating the strontium-90. So that needs to be done in conjunction, I think, because that landfill is likely saturated with strontium-90. And removing it would enable installation of a more effective treatment wall. So the replacement plans for that treatment wall should be fully presented in the EIS along with the percent removal that you're achieving and what it will be designed to remove in the future. Now the transuranics were supposed to be shipped out to WIP in 2013. That was 4 years ago, according to an earlier waste environmental impact statement. Yet no action was taken until this year when DOE finally began discussing changing the designation to defense or military waste. So our question is, what took so long? Why did you wait for 13 years to decide to change the designation? You must have known that you couldn't move it long before then. So leaving this building is going to affect the ability to complete the phase 1 project and to deal with the strontium plume contamination. You also, in that EIS, you never studied the long-term storage of transuranics, so we think that that also needs to be added to this supplementary EIS. If it's going to be in long-term storage, then we have to make sure it's done right in accordance with the regulation. That those are the EPA regs, 40 CFR 191. And all of the delays and changes in the implementation of phase 1 should be discussed in the EIS. In addition, there's been no explanation for why the independent science panel has no longer been participating in the review of the recent studies. We think that panel has a lot of work to do yet to review the studies recently completed and any future work as we move forward.
And Barbara, you have a minute.
Okay, so that's all I need. So the SEIS should discuss the project management failures that have been critiqued since 2012, originally by the General Accounting Office, subsequently by the Central Office of Environmental Management that oversees West Valley, as well as the Office of the Inspector General at the Department of Energy that just released their report in 2017. And we should understand precisely what is being done to correct the numerous problems that occurred so that we can have greater accountability in the future. In fact, we believe that we need an independent monitor at West Valley eventually, and we'll be trying to push to figure out how we're going to get that independent monitor. So the delays that have occurred have actually caused enormous environmental impacts because they are affecting when we dig up the source of that plume. And as a result, more strontium is moving across the entire North Plateau. So there are environmental impacts associated with these delays.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Diane? Thank you. Great.
My name is Diane Dorigo. I'm with Nuclear Information and Resource Service out of Washington, D.C., but Western New York is my home, and my family is still in this area. And I will echo the thanks that have been made to the people that work at West Valley to really try to prevent the site from getting worse. But I do need to ask the agencies and the contractors to please stop calling us receptors, dose receptors. We're people, we're perhaps other species, but it's very dehumanizing. So ask the contractors, and we're asking you to please call us people. We also would like, and my organization is part of the West Valley Action Network, which is a very loose but large coalition of organizations and individuals who are working for the full cleanup of the West Valley site. Going back to the EIS, the SEIS scope, the site needs to be cleaned up to a level greater than the 500 millirems a year that the Department of Energy thinks is good enough. The 25 or 100 or 500 millirems that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission thinks is good enough, and even better than the New York guidance at 10 millirems. We really need to have a full cleanup. And keep in mind that the radiation analyses that have been done, the radiation protection standards assume a standard young white male. They do not really protect for other parts of our life cycle. And radiation has been shown to cause more cancer in women and the most cancer in children, and baby girls would be the highest at risk. And of course, they are who have the DNA for the future of our species. So we need to, and the reason that this is important is that as the contractors who are putting information into the computer models and the performance assessments, probabilistic performance assessment proceed, they're using basic the basic standard radiation regulations, when we really need to be protecting more than those regulations protect. The studies, we've had concerns about the makeup of the teams that are doing the work and the contractors that are carrying them out, and concerned that the studies are not really impartial. For example, the study that was supposed to look at exhumation did not even evaluate the option of fully exhuming the site. Yet that's what we all called for in 2010 in the environmental impact statement then, and now the study is complete and it's been submitted to the agencies, and it hasn't even looked at what we all were asking for. So now it sounds like we're going to have to trust the computer modeling contractor, who, and all of these contractors, by the way, are nuclear advocates. They're not impartial. They are nuclear advocates. They make their livings working for the nuclear industry at other sites around the country, and that's why we need to have the ability to look at the inputs that these contractors are putting into the computer code, and we need to have access to what the assumptions are in the computer code. It's not like any of us are full experts on modeling and computer code stuff. These guys made it up themselves, and now they're implementing it at sites around the country. But what we need here is access to what are the inputs, what are the assumptions that are going into the models that are going to be used by you guys to make the decision. It can't be 4 minutes.
It was.
I can wrap it up.
Okay, thanks, Diane.
So we really need a searchable electronic library or something that's equivalent to that, so that those of us who are going to at least try to see what assumptions are going in have the ability to do so. Right now it's a black box. We need access to the GoldSim computer code, which is being used to process this secret information. And we would like resources for independent verification and analysis. And as I mentioned, I've testified the other 2 nights, the assumption needs to be a 0 discount rate in terms of economics. The studies that are done need to assume that costs that are incurred by an accident or a leak or disasters in the future, rather than having a discount rate that makes future costs look insignificant and therefore not worth protecting against, at least if a 0 discount rate is used, then we'll have a value for future damages that we can compare to the cost of preventing those now. Finally, many have asked for extensions on the comment period, and I would ask that we learn before the day before the deadline. If we could learn sooner rather than later, if we might be granted some amount of extension, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much, Diane. We're going to go to Leah, and then to John Stith, and Patricia Townsend, and Ellen Banks. And
I wonder, I have spoken before, if I could go at the end if there's time and give my place back to somebody who hasn't spoken yet.
okay, thank you, Leah. That's fine. John Stith.
Hi, my name is John Stith, and I've been a financial advisor for American Portfolios for the last 18 years. But for the last 35 years, I've been a member of the Sufi Order International, which teaches that we are all a part of the natural world, one big life, not only plants and animals, but rocks and rivers too. Nuclear waste hangs like an albatross around the neck of every person in the world. There is no amount of nuclear material that is harmless to life. I'm upset that we have to deal with this waste material, but I'm outraged that there are actually people so ignorant that they advocate producing more of this stuff. For almost 70 years, I've watched European American civilization engage in a reckless and relentless campaign to try to control nature, something which, of course, no one can do. That's evidenced by the mess we find ourselves in now, that on the promise of being able to generate virtually unlimited, safe, cheap energy, we are instead saddled with the awesome responsibility of taking care of the most toxic substance known to humanity for countless generations to come at an astronomical cost, both in its threat to human life and in dollars. Strontium-90 from the West Valley site has been discovered at the bottom of Lake Ontario, which means that it must have leaked out of containment at West Valley, traveled down the creeks into Lake Erie, past Buffalo's water intake, and out into Lake Ontario. Strontium-90 has a half-life of 28.8 years, which represents the amount of time it takes for about half of the original to decay. 10 half-lives are required for the material to have mostly decayed. That's 288 years. But some nuclear material decays into other nuclear materials, and some isotopes take much longer, even into the hundreds of thousands of years. The physics of nuclear decay is complicated, but the fact of nuclear radiation is simple. It's not good for you. I wanted to speak in support of what Shannon talked about, that this is not just about the integrity of the West Valley site, but of all of us who live in Western New York and beyond. The West Valley nuclear site is built on loose glacial sediment, subject to erosion, in one of the highest rainfall areas of the country, with these effects expected to increase due to global climate change. Just several miles upstream from the reservation of the Seneca Nation, just above where the water intake for Erie County's municipal water supply is located, supplying water for over 1 million residents. If one were going to place nuclear radiation in an area where it would have the highest potential for a threat to life, such as Al-Qaeda or ISIS might do, one could not find a better site than West Valley. The waste stored at West Valley should be contained, dug up, and transported as safely as possible to a site which is flat, dry, and sparsely populated. I get that this committee is charged with the making the recommendation regarding the disposition of the radioactive material at West Valley, and that those recommendations will necessarily be constrained by affordability. But I have one question. If any of us were faced with a life-threatening illness, what percentage of our wealth would we be willing to spend on a solution? And I would submit that the only reasonable answer is 100%. Again, the waste stored at West Valley should be contained, dug up, and transported as safely as possible to a site which is flat, dry, and sparsely populated.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. Patricia? Oh, good, thank you.
I'm Pat Townsend, now otherwise known as the Nuclear Baby, thanks to Buffalo News this morning. I'm a medical and environmental anthropologist, and I hope to submit additional written comments that will bring my background as a scientist to the challenges of West Valley. Tonight I'm speaking not as a scientist, but as a member of the Western New York interfaith climate justice community. ICJC is affiliated with a network of religious communities. Since 2009, I have supported full cleanup at West Valley, having come to my position through education efforts of my Presbyterian church. Both the Presbytery of Western New York and the network of religious communities supported the full cleanup option in 2009. Already earlier this year, in January and February, both the Presbytery and ICJC passed strong resolutions in support of full cleanup. This time, they added their concerns about the increased severity and frequency of heavy rains, believing that these storms are caused by climate change, which both organizations have strong stands against, and that they present a greater danger to the site than we knew in 2009, and yet that up to this point, this has been inadequately addressed in the project studies and documents. Although we appreciate the commitment to NYSERDA in making sure that neglect does not continue. When we talk about the nuclear wastes at the West Valley site, our conversations are mostly about science, economics, and politics. This is as it should be, since we draw on these disciplines to help us formulate alternatives and understand the probable consequences of action or inaction. But when we make important decisions, these decisions are ethical decisions that are shaped by our deeply held values. As I have hinted, my values are largely shaped by my Christian faith. In recent years, however, I've been involved in many interfaith conversations, particularly conversations about pollution and about climate disruption. I've learned from those conversations that the values that underlie my own decision-making on West Valley are indeed widely shared. Widely shared values shared by Christians, Jews, Christians of all stripes, Protestants, Catholics, and indigenous people as well. What are some of the widely shared ethical concerns that all of us bring to West Valley? One of the most widely shared is the stewardship of creation, a respect for the whole created world that includes plants and animals, water, wind, and soil, as well as the creatures of our own species. The health of all would be harmed by a worst-case erosion failure, a scenario which I believe is inadequately explored in the studies so far. Another second shared ethical principle is that of environmental justice. The burden of environmental pollution should not be unequally imposed on the poor and on racial ethnic minorities, those who have benefited least from the industries that created the pollution. And a third and final ethical principle that's widely shared is the principle of intergenerational equity. Our generation created these wastes. Our generation must clean them up. Cleanup has proceeded more slowly, certainly than anyone expected back in the 1980s, and even more slowly than the 8 to 10 years envisioned for phase 1 in the FEIS. We need a process of accountability to ensure that activities remain on track. We have already waited too long to finish this task in the lifetime of most of us who were around when nuclear fuel services operated at the site. We must not leave this cleanup for our grandchildren. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Pat. And Ellen Banks? And then we're going to go to Diane Hinman and Jeannie Loomis.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Banks. I'm the Conservation Chair of the Atlantic Chapter of the Sierra Club, which encompasses New York State. My comments are generally in line with the policy of the state and national organization, but my words are of my own. I'm also a mother and a grandmother. First, I would like to thank the Seneca Nation for welcoming us to their territory, and even more for their care for the water and land over many centuries. Indigenous people have been given an unfair burden from environmental destruction and breaching of treaties. The present and potential damage from West Valley Nuclear Waste Facility is an item on this long list of harms. This facility was poorly conceived and badly planned, and its conditions got worse. It is built over a federally designated sole source aquifer and drains to creeks, onto Lake Erie, further to the Niagara River and Lake Ontario, threatening the water of millions of people. Radiation has been found already in Lake Ontario, as others have mentioned. Children play and fish in these streams. Climate change will make this damage worse as ever more powerful rainstorms erode the embankment, moving it closer to the stored nuclear waste with possible catastrophic spills. Meanwhile, plumes of strontium-90 and cesium are creeping closer to these precious waters. The nuclear waste is not stored safely, and the project area probably cannot be made safe. Ideally, all the waste should be processed and sent to a safer site, but there seems to be no safe place for it that will not endanger other areas of the country. Until better, safer sites can be found and made secure with the consent of those who live near them. A second best solution is to process the waste in keeping with the best of modern day technology to reduce the harm locally. This site cleanup must be conducted according to current scientific and engineering knowledge and minimally in full compliance with federal law. Dig it up, make it as safe as possible, secure it much more carefully than it is guarded now, and don't add to it. To keep these lethal materials in rusting, leaky drums and trenches is totally unacceptable. The cost of a complete cleanup may seem high, only if our values are warped. Newer and more lethal weapons are provided to the military with no real thought to the cost. We are a rich nation, but our priorities are poor. What are our health, water, and land worth? What is the replacement cost of Lake Erie? How would we live without safe water? And who gave us, the human species, the right to destroy the land and water that we share with all the animals and plants? What is the cost of radiation-linked cancer in dollars and in suffering? These dumping grounds of nuclear waste will be a problem for many centuries if humankind is fortunate enough to even last that long. I grew up in a time and place, Schenectady, New York, in the 50s and 60s, the home of General Electric's Nuclear Research Division, where nuclear fission was promoted as a safe and limitless source of energy. Many of my classmates were children of the nuclear scientists who were proud to be involved in the promise of nuclear energy. This promise has not come true. Quite the opposite. Nuclear power plants are immensely expensive and risky, currently subsidized with our tax dollars, and they should all be dismantled quickly in favor of safe, clean, lower-cost, renewable energy. My grandchild and all our grandchildren deserve a clean, safe earth with clean water and natural beauty. They have done no harm and will ask us, if we don't act now, why we didn't care enough to leave the earth better than we found it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd like you to do what you could to extend this comment period. Again, I think it's in your best interest. It's really easy to Google. It's prepared by the Federal Register. It was made in conjunction with the Cornell Email Rulemaking Initiative, as well as with the General Service Administration, which I know you're familiar with. And it provides, as far as the length of time for comment, for complex rulemaking, agencies may provide for longer periods of time, such as 180 days or more. This is a complex situation. Secondly, it says an agency may extend or reopen a comment period when we want it extended. I think we'd like it extended. Or may reopen a comment period when it is not satisfied that it has enough high-quality comments, not the case here, or when the public comments make a good case for adding more time. I've gone to two of these meetings. I've listened to these people. I'm a novice. I'm really just trying to learn what's happening. There's a lot of moving parts.
these people have made a good case for extending the time. And in addition to what, or I'd just like to refer again to what Diane said. If you extend the time, please let us know as quickly as you can. It should be extended. Okay, I am an attorney. And as an attorney, of course, I can't behave in a proper, inappropriate manner. But as an attorney, I have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And in this case, I just think it would have been better. I talked with 2 veterans of this oversight process, and both of them were not aware of the issuance of the erosion modeling study, the radiological inventory report, or the exhumation study. I guess one of them isn't available. And in fact, when I Googled the West Valley modeling long-term erosion, what I got was like, I think a February quarterly meeting, and there were still a whole lot of questions being answered. So I don't think I think we're entitled to, you can see the elbow grease and the concern people bring. I think we're entitled to be able to digest these and to have access to these studies. And so again, I think whatever you do determine will be much better received. I think transparency will be better. If you please, President Gates has said that they routinely asked for a 6-month extension, and I think we deserve it. And I just don't think you can tell us that we have not made a good case for an extension of this comment period. And I hope you gentlemen do your best by us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. And Jeannie Loomis?
I have nothing to add at this point.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie. Next 3 speakers are Clarence Seneca, Agnes Williams, and Ross Strong.
Greatness. My name is Clarence Seneca. I work over in the Seneca Language Department, and I've been studying our ways for the better 2/3 of my life, and it's become a way of life for me now. I just wanted to share our perspective on the water, is how we look at it. Is when we, every day we give thanks. That's the first thing we do before we conduct our business. We give thanks for each other. And then after that, right, we give thanks for our Mother Earth, who provides everything that we use to keep us thinking well. It's Canada, we call it. Right after that, the very next thing we give thanks for is the water. The different waters, Ganda, Gadanyo. And the next thing we mention is Ojino Yatdadanya. We call it the veins that run under the earth, the veins of our mother. And that's one of the things that's most important to me, is that we can't be poisoning the veins of our mother, because if we do that, we're poisoning ourselves. And our thanks continues on to Onigi Gatsu, the springs that come out of the water, that come out of the ground. The rivers, lakes, and ultimately the ocean. And with this Thanksgiving comes also the obligation to take care of it. And this what's brought me to this is, I guess I call myself a water protector too, because you can't give thanks without actually obligating yourself to take care of things. And so this is what we want to give voice to, the animals, the birds, the fish, the things that don't have a voice. And I didn't really prepare anything like written. I was just thinking about what I was going to say. I wanted to just share with you that that's our perspective. And that another thing is that we have love for each other. And Gabigaha. Do you but? Do you but? Do you but? Take care of each other. Yeah. That means taking care of each other as people, as all the creatures out walking about. And I don't really have much else to say, is that I would like to help support the request for the extension and the total cleanup. Because there's another part I was hoping I wouldn't forget, is what we call dadigosundojins. They're unborn, the faces that are still coming to be born. We say those faces are in the earth still. And it's really important that we can't be poisoning any of that. The water, the earth. And I just like to read that I'm in support of a total cleanup. I think that's all I have to say. I probably forgot a lot of other things.
Well, thank you.
Maybe next week.
Thank you, Clarence. And Agnes?
My name's Agnes Williams. I'm a mother, grandmother, and I have 3 daughters. So I'm here as a mother. And, as Clarence says, one of our major differences from the outside community, is our culture and our language. We've been here for thousands of years, and there's a reason why we're still here, is because we believe in certain things and practice certain ways and try to maintain ourselves in a certain manner. And one of them truly is, that we don't really own the land. We only borrow the land from the future generations, from the children in the future. We always have to keep them in mind. And that we have to, any decision that's made, we try to say, well, how is this decision that we're going to make affect 7 generations of people from now? Even if we're going to get up in the morning and turn on the faucet and brush our teeth and walk out the door, we're going to get in our car and turn on the hybrid, or we're going to turn on the electric car, we're going to fire up the gas guzzler. So all of that affects, and all of those things, that's our culture, and that's who we are as people. And tonight I want to really emphasize the main thing about the waste, no more waste, putting a moratorium on any new waste coming into West Valley. Because of this, NIMBY, no, not in my backyard. Nobody wants it in their backyard, of course. Nobody wants it moved from here to there. It's hard to move it. Nobody wants it railed or trucked across their highways or in front of the yards or their homes. But it is with the federal government policies that have been put in place in the last 16 years, that nuclear is still being funded at a very high level rate, that more waste is going to be developed in this next environmental impact of this. And they did just build a new bridge pointing right at West Valley. So when they were building that, I was like, why are they building this bridge? They're going to bring more in. So, that is a really big concern, and people haven't really addressed it. I also concur with the people that have come before me that, asked for more of a comment period. We had a hard time. We advertised a lot more than we have, got the people out, and people have organized in their various groups and organizations. But even in the Seneca Nation, I know the hearings were advertised in our Seneca Nation newsletter. We have a membership of 8,000 people. Most of those people are off territory. We have 2 reservations. There is another reservation near Basin of Senecas. There's many, many people. I went to the library tonight before I came here, and the librarian asked me, "What's going on at the building tonight?" So even within our own, we haven't really done, we could do a better job, I think, of informing people. Which brings me to my last point. In 2007, the United Nations adopted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, primarily because across the world, everything that's happened pretty much in history has been done to us without our prior free and informed consent. And this was the case of West Valley as well. Nobody came here, there was no public hearing, nobody came to send us a letter or anything to say, is it all right if we put a nuclear plant upstream from it? And we weren't even considered, to be asked. But nowadays, because we do have the declaration, and it is the new standard of international law, that we require prior free and informed consent for anything that is done that has anything to do with us as Seneca people, and we're going to continue to demand that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Agnes. And Ron Strawn, Senior.
Thank you for giving me time to speak. I want to speak a little bit on behalf of the Seneca Nation. I'm a counselor for the Seneca Nation, but I also want to kind of interject some of my own perspectives. So I hope I don't confuse the whole matter for you guys. The Haudenosaunee had lived within the Great Lake region for thousands of years with inherent respect and responsibility for the natural world. The center point of Haudenosaunee culture is what Western science terms as sustainability. The preservation of the water, fish, plants, animals, and all nature is integral to our culture. The Great Law considers as far as the seventh generation of all humans, leaving the nurturing of the environment to the people of today. The scope of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for the Western New York Nuclear Service Center should be aimed at the development and innovative innovation technologies while performing site-wide removal and less focus on the development of hybrid alternatives. Additionally, the Seneca Nation would like to participate in the preparation of the SEIS as a cooperating agency, and I think Shannon basically brought that up. I just want to clarify that a little bit more. We are maybe one, if not the only, community that actually lives along the river. I mean, where we live, our homes, there's a lot of other people along that corridor that are from West Valley down that is farmland. They don't use it the way that we do. They're not as exposed to the contaminants that are there as we are. And so we're at the end of the rail. And unfortunately, this is our only homeland. There's no other place for us to move to. And that's why we're concerned and asking to be, a cooperating agency. And we're hoping that, you can carry that word backwards and really help with that. Excuse me. The Seneca Nation territory is located downstream from West Valley site on the Cattaraugus Creek at the mouth of Lake Erie. And the spread of radioisotopes into the environment is of utmost concern. The West Valley site is eroding and will continue to do so. Unpredictable rates due to climate change. The potential for the release of radiological contamination into the Cattaraugus Creek watershed is imminent. We already know that because we already have hot spots, and that's another thing that we want to make clear, and I know that's probably not really in the scope of what you guys are dealing with, but we're already facing it. It's already here. There's already been a breach, and as I said earlier, part of our problem is that nobody wants to go back into history and talk about Westinghouse or anybody else that came here for profit, and we all know it. And I'm not blaming any of you, because you're at the point of cleanup. But it needs to be said that site isn't compatible for that kind of industry. Never was. So it doesn't matter how much cleanup or isolation you want to do. It's not proper for that. It never was. And why we say that, we know, because we're contaminated. We've been lied to before by experts, by people saying that they could control this. And my elders basically said, no, they won't. They don't. And they'll pass the buck. And generations will go by. And other people will be left up, and there will be nobody left responsible. We as Native people have seen this game before. We know it. There's no place in our legal system, in your legal system, for our understanding of what we look as proper legal law or precedent. And that's why we're kind of left out, and we take these opportunities to make these statements. Where was I? It's imminent. The site-wide removal alternative needs to become the focus of the SEIS. Contaminated stream sediment will continue to migrate downstream. Therefore, by stream bed or stream bank contamination should be remediated. And that's another thing, is that I'm concerned that we're just talking about West Valley and we're not talking about what's happening downstream. A particular concern is Area 3, identified on a radiological survey in Dose Assessment Report as the confluence of the Buttermilk Creek and the Cattaraugus Creek. We know that it's contaminated. We don't think it actually has been adequately even evaluated, because we see the test site so far away from the waterway. And so we got to be fearful that somebody's just trying to play with a dot on there. And because they left out that critical region right by the water, in the water, on the banks of the water. Removal of high-level waste tanks, farms is imperative. Close in place is not an option. The full removal of buried waste in both the NRC licensed disposal area and the state licensed disposal area is necessary. The disposal areas are adjacent to Franks Creek and Erdman's Brook. The remediation of the cesium prong on the northern plateau contains plumes may not seem cost effective with short-lived radioisotopes, but off-site mitigation and contamination and further propagation downstream is unnecessary. Again, that's what we're living with. Nobody's talking to us about, even this funding of $60 million a year, nobody's talking to us about how they're going to take care of our people down here that are already high risk of cancers, that we're already been affected from what has been spilled from this site from before. I don't expect anybody to admit to it, but that's the truth. Because it's not just what lives in that creek, it's what passes through it. It's what drinks from it. Birds that step into that creek and migrate out. I've seen it up to that site. I've worked at that site, and I know it's not secure. Because I've seen things fly in and out. I've seen ladders that were contaminated on site by people walking over them with protected boots on, which left contamination on ladders. I watched all that equipment go out that gate every night. Every night. Guys were taking it home. So, I think I already went through this part, the remedial necessity problem. All right. This is what we're really asking for. Today we request that a full cleanup of the West Valley site, unrestricted release should be strived for, with a full removal of the site facility, as well as removal of contaminated soil and sediment. It is understood that with current funding of approximately $60 million annually, it would take 100 years to achieve full cleanup. But the future protection of the Canaries Creek and the Great Lakes does not have a dollar sign. The Seneca Nation has spent numerous hours lobbying for increased funding to the West Valley site and will continue to do so. That is one of our pledges to kind of continue on there. We got one more paragraph. The Onondaga people of Great Hills have been subject to cesium-137 contamination on our ancestral lands, and it is imperative to eliminate the risks for future contamination. The community thrives in the outdoor environment, even using the natural world as a classroom for their children. The Onondaga highly utilize the creeks and surrounding areas. They continue to live off the land, eating wild berries, collecting onions for soup, as well as harvesting medical plants. The health and existence of resources like native plants, trees, fish, and wildlife, water, air, are all critical to supporting the traditional dependency and survival. Therefore, we have a vested interest in protecting our land and our members who live on or near them, and ensuring that our lands exist for future generations. Likewise, the federal government has a treaty obligation with the Senecas to protect the free use and enjoyment of our lands. So, that's basically our official statement by from the Seneca Nation. I'd like to make sure that's put in there, and we also have a map of that Area 3 that we talked about that kind of explains where things were tested and were not taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ross.
Yep.
Melissa Parker, Robert Jones, and Jason Corbin.
Now we scan out. My name is Alyssa Parker. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming here and doing this wonderful presentation. I probably wouldn't have known much about this project if you guys hadn't explained it to us, so thank you very much for taking time out of your day to do this. I wanted to kind of come at it as a science aspect. I am an environmental engineering student. I've noticed a couple of different isotopes that you guys have mentioned in your presentations, and I'm not sure anybody else understands them, so I kind of did a little bit of research, and I'd like to share that with everybody. Hopefully you guys can put this in your supplemental environmental impact statement. Plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,000 years. Plutonium-241 has a half-life of 14.4 years. The smaller the half-life there is of any of these isotopes, it emits more energetic radioactivity. Plutonium also has a daughter product of uranium. That's a little bit concerning to me because both of them are radioactive. Small doses of plutonium are highly toxic, and they can lead to radiation illness, cancer, and in a lot of cases, death. Uranium has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. If inhaled or ingested, increased risk of lung and bone cancer have been found. Cesium has 30.17 years for a half-life. It also has medium and high energy beta particles, which can disrupt molecules in cells and deposit energy in tissues, causing damage. All of these are irreversible. These are diseases that come to our people through autoimmune diseases all the way through to cancers. Cancer is personally something that I have had to deal with. I've seen somebody go through this, and it's not fun. I would rather not see any of our people suffer like that. My mom also has hypothyroidism. Our family has no history of hypothyroidism. She used to eat fish from that river, from the creek. She also used to play in the creek when they were dumping these radioactive chemicals into the creek. They used to have fun trying to figure out what color the creek was going to be that day. It's scary. And a lot of us, like my age, haven't seen that but we're speaking up for them, because some people aren't here to speak up for that. We also have children on their way who are not able to speak as well, and this is what we fight for. I am asking for not only a full removal and cleanup of the site, but I'm also asking for an extension, because not too many people were able to make it to these meetings. I didn't know about most of these meetings until just earlier today. I did not want to speak today, but I feel my voice might have something to add to your guys' impact statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Alyssa. Robert?
Evening, my name is Robert Jones. Sorry, my voice is tired. I'm a descendant of Horatio Jones. He was the first Jones boy here at the Seneca Nation. He was adopted by Corn Planter's sister. He negotiated the treaties for the Seneca and the Six Nations at the time, apparently tapped on the shoulder by George Washington. Most people would think I'm full of it, but genealogical research is amazing. This is publication 6 of the Buffalo Historical Society. It's all documented in this book. It's over 115 years old. It was published in 1903. It contains a lot of interesting stuff about the Seneca Nation and its history. I want to start right off with the status of the Seneca Nation. What I have before, I'll read just a paragraph of it. This is the documents and official reports illustrating the causes which led to the revolution and the government of the Seneca Indians in the year 1848 and to the recognition of a representative Republican Constitution by the authorities of the United States and of the state of New York. You'll see when I do submit this as evidence, it's stamped by the Library of Congress. It's printed by William Woody from 1857. Status is everything in my book, and I think it is in the courts, the U.S. courts. They took some land from us years and years ago for failure to pay tax. John Luke, the president at the time of the Seneca Nation, wrote memorial letters to the New York State Comptroller, the state of New York, and to the U.S. government, after which George Moneypenny showed up here to do an investigation. This is a small history of that report. I'll read the one paragraph that I think is pertinent to what we're talking about today. It states, from a careful examination of the several treaties heretofore made with the Senecas and decisions of the highest courts of this state and of the United States, with references. It states, your committee are clearly of the opinion that the Senecas do not hold the title to the Cattaraugus and Allegheny reservations under the state of New York, nor under the United States, but their title to the same is original, absolute, and exclusive. And as the Senecas are not citizens of this state and have no representative in our legislature, we can claim no right to tax them. They are rather to be regarded as a distinct and independent nation, having a constitution and representative government of their own. I'll step back to the part where we talked about this public hearing. This is not the general public here. This land has a unique status established in this report. If we were part of the general public, we could go get loans for housing and for businesses. We cannot do that. This is a sovereign nation you're dealing with. And because I think it's going to take a miracle for you guys to clean up West Valley without any detrimental effects to the Cattaraugus Creek, I'm just real concerned about that. I want to move on to some of the documents I brought regarding some of the villages that are along the Cattaraugus Creek. There was in 1905 some leases signed for, this one's for the Burning Spring Fort. And I just want to read one little paragraph from here. There was a lease signed with Maria S. Jimerson and Annie Snow. The earthwork, commonly known as the Burning Spring Indian Fort, situated on Big Indian Creek near its junction with Cattaraugus Creek and the Cattaraugus Indian Reservation. There's this other one called the Silver Heels site. The site is located on a flat top point and land above the floodplain of Cattaraugus Creek. It lies in the town of Brant, Erie County, about 1.5 miles east of Irving, New York. This point of land was set off from the adjoining land on the same level by an earthen wall. The principal excavations were conducted near the edge of the point and within the enclosure. In 1903, a party from the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology, Harvard University, consisting of Arthur C. Parker and M.R. Harrington, excavated this site. And I'll read just the, there was this original manuscript, let me back up, it's titled Ancient Mounds and Earthworks Along the Cattaraugus Creek by Marcus Sackett. That states the original paper was read before the Chautauqua Society of History and Natural Science, August 30th, 1888, by Marcus Sackett of Irving, New York. The manuscript was loaned us by the Chautauqua County Historical Society. He says, there is a series of ancient mounds and fortifications extending along the Cattaraugus Creek, which has attracted very little attention and is seldom referred to when speaking of the remains of Indian or ancient works in western New York. The works are referred to are on both sides of the Cattaraugus, extending from Lake Erie to the mouth of the Big Indian Creek, a branch of the Cattaraugus which empties into it from the south about 5 miles from Lake Erie. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that there's always been, for thousands and thousands of years, villages along the Cattaraugus Creek. As a water protector, I can't let what's happening go without some type of fight. I'm hoping that soon there'll be some interest in what's going on with Horatio Jones. One more minute.
Yes, go ahead.
Also within this book, it is known that Horatio Jones was married 3 times. Once to an Indian consort, which is my line, second to a Sarah Whitmer, and third to an Elizabeth Starr. This second lady he was married to, Sarah Whitmer, apparently was sister to where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was organized on April 6, 1830 in Fayette County, New York. In this book that I will submit as evidence, which has never been done before, there was a gold Bible found in Seneca territory over near Palmyra, New York. This young guy named Joe Smith found it. Basically, there's a culminating event within this book, and I'm not trying to convert anybody to Mormonism, but if you consider the book as simply a historical record, in the third book, or the third Nephi book, contained within the gold Bible, there is this man who descends out of heaven and identifies himself as Jesus Christ. The Christian doctrine of discovery does not apply to the Seneca Nation. Let's work together to resolve the issues in West Valley. The land belongs to the Senecas, it always has, and it's going to spread like wildfire. There is no way the water protectors in the nation should be incarcerated or anything like that for trying to protect water. The time for the Pope and what happened with him, with Unum Sanctum from 1307, has ended. Our Mayan brothers defined that was at December 21st, 2012. That was the end of the age or the eon. The Pope knows this. We're fighters, and we're going to make sure that this is done right. I can assure you that. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Robert. Now, is Jason here? Jason Grover?
Right there.
Boo. Oh, snuck up on me. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, I'm good at that. So, good evening. Thanks for having this forum. Just make a few unprepared comments. First off, I'd like to stress the importance of extending the comment period given the release of more documents and their highly technical nature. So I'm very concerned about environmental issues. For the better part of 30 years, I've been a water protector. I've worked with the Western Shoshone Nation, dealing with the Ruby Valley Treaty and Yucca Mountain, as well as the Nevada test site. I've worked with a lot of different nations. I've walked from the parking lot out in front of West Valley all the way following down here to Sunset Bay, the whole way. A couple of years ago, thanks to the work that Aggie and Maria have done to continue to raise awareness and for us to walk in prayer for this water. Because this site sitting up there is like Russian roulette, gun to the head. You know, and I've been very busy for the last 2 months dealing with another situation of potential radioactive contamination of the Allegheny River. So given my high level of interest in this, and I also happen to have a PhD in natural resources, so I'm very committed to environmental issues. I have not had the time or the space to adequately review these. And I would like, the opportunity for myself and Jen and Seneca and others who have some background in reviewing academic and scientific reports to be able to relate that information adequately to our community. So that's a very strong reason for extending the comment period. I'd also like to encourage, the timely and effective dissemination of information online regularly. And I'd also like to support the assertion that the Seneca Nation needs to be treated as a cooperating agency and have a seat at the table according to NEPA guidelines, as well as other health agencies in Western New York. And for me, the only thing acceptable is a full and complete cleanup that includes any hot spots downstream, the most comprehensive assessment and the best possible science and engineering brought to the table. There should not be any corners cut. This is a serious environmental justice issue. The fact that this community has not only been impacted by land theft that we were promised by George Washington by treaty in 1794 would not take place, yet we were bullied and backed into a corner into small remaining parcels of our ancestral homelands, and here we've had to face, when my mom was growing up here and my aunts and uncles in the 40s and 50s, tannery, glue factory, then it's West Valley. It's like, it's just injustice, and for there only to be a partial cleanup and still stuff remaining storage on site with things that have half-lives of, years that we can't even really fathom how long are, that's not acceptable. So it's got to be a full cleanup, and I would like to encourage, as an amateur mycologist who loves mushrooms and who encourages everyone to read a book called Mycelium Running by Paul Stamets, How Mushrooms Will Save the World. There's a lot of promise in fungi being able to remediate petrochemical, hydrocarbon pollution, as well as radiation. And so I would like to encourage that we look at that possibilities. Mushrooms have co-evolved with us for a whole long time. That's why fungal infections are so hard for our bodies to get rid of sometimes, but there are allies out there in the forest, and they're pretty tasty too if you know which ones to get that won't kill you. Big part of my diet is mushrooms, so mushrooms will save the world. All power to the people.
Hey, thank you very much, Jason. How about Kenton Kennedy, then Charlie Bowman, and Jocelyn Jones? There's Ken. Where is Ken? Is he still? There's Ken. All righty.
It's Keaton.
Go ahead.
Take your time. Take your time.
My name is Keaton Kennedy. I am here to speak beyond I'm here to speak on behalf of the Seneca Nation and President Todd Gates. And this is a huge concern for me. I grew up walking these creeks, fishing in these creeks, playing, swimming. I don't know anymore if I feel safe going to the creek anymore, fishing, because it's extremely hard to know how safe, and I'm just here to gather knowledge because I didn't know about this until today. But I would like to ask for the extension for 6 months. Just because there's not much of a presence from anyone else at the nation. And just would like to have a full cleanup and just I'm being updated on this regularly, on this issue, especially on how safe it can be, just because it just concerns me moving it the way that they have been. So I don't know anything about that, but it just concerns me and everybody else, and I would like the nation to work with West Valley and them to work with us and listen to us on these issues that they have. We just need to be more noted on the situation and how they're gonna make things better for everybody. And I'm concerned for my nieces and nephews growing up because they like going swimming, they like doing all these things, and I just don't want them to grow up having to worry about these things that happen, like cancer. I've seen many people go through it, and I would not like to see that happen anymore. I'm just sick of dealing with that pain of losing family members and everyone else to cancer and all these sicknesses like diabetes and all that stuff. And that's why I'm here today, is speaking for those people that can't speak, speaking for the younger ones. And I figured I'm the only one that can speak on behalf of that.
Thank you for coming up to speak to all of us tonight. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ken.
Once again to speak. My name is Charlie Bowman. I'm co-chair of the Environmental Justice Task Force of the Western New York Peace Center, now celebrating its 50th year in Buffalo, New York. I want to underscore what Shannon said earlier. I'm surprised that the Seneca Nation is not a cooperating agency. I understand that the cooperating agencies are the following: the Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health, the New York State DEC, the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Seneca Nation should be included on that immediately. I mean, when you go back to, those of you going back to Washington, I mean, that should be done next week. And I understand that there's other studies. I went on to the site that you mentioned the other night, West Valley priorities, what's the?
Phase 1 studies.
Say again?
Phase 1 studies.
Yeah, phase1studies.org. I could not find, I'm not even sure that the reports listed there were final. Okay, and I understand that there's some other reports that should be included there. Corrective measures study, the CSAP study, the characterization, sampling, and analysis plan, and the exhumation reports apparently are not public. And the deadline for the scoping process is 1 month from now, almost 1 month from now, a little over 1 month from now. I mean, each one of those reports that I just listed are going to be thousands of pages long. I read the geology report, and that's over 1,000 pages. I didn't read all of it. I didn't understand 90% of it, but I looked through it. And people are going to have the opportunity to look through it. The members of those cooperating agencies, who are officially cooperating agencies, are going to have the time to read through those 1,000 pages reports. The Seneca Nation is going to have a lot of time to study those reports and talk to people, talk to experts. So we need a 6-month extension. The second thing, we need a full cleanup. Every hotspot along the Cattaraugus Creek should be cleaned up. All the plumes in West Valley should be cleaned up. The SDA should be cleaned up, and the NDA. And we're in a setting where we have climate change, which is causing more frequent, more intense rainstorms. That's not good. And so we need to do this sooner rather than later, before these rainstorms really become much more frequent. That's the likelihood of having a severe rainstorm within the 10 half-lives of cesium or strontium is increasing. That's not a good picture for the Cattaraugus Creek area. So we need to get it done sooner rather than later, and we need an extension. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Jacqueline Jones?
Jocelyn.
Kenton?
Jocelyn.
I know, I'm sorry. Go ahead, she's terrific, go ahead.
ne hatiga konne te guawi na od ne oiwan ne ongwai wayandako ne hatiga konne te duasnis ne ganyo tonda wasa we no game we ni sa de nyo ne sungwa ta nokta on wainza that ganyo wainza that hawe ono ne de tisnes ne etino ayoinza de hai ko ne ka kwe ko ne washoni hai kwa hawe o ne ne de yong washnes de yong kota de shnes hai ko yung kota no kwak ne kakwe ko kota tong kwe tanyani ne ko kanon da ke ne ke wani sa de da kwe nyo an ke ja ton dak ne ta te ko so ton je so ji ne oyawane ne ka nyo de yung kota wani he yo en za ke ne no hiok ka nyo and on the way near he yo en za ke ne and Ohioak. So I wanted to come tonight to talk to you about why I've come here, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. And my name is Degwano Dihit, and I am a person of the Great Hills, otherwise known as the Seneca people. And I've come here tonight because we have a very important responsibility. And back when the Creator, back in the day when time had started, the Creator made the earth. And when He made the earth, He intended that we take care of our Mother Earth and everything that He has made. And He also intended that we take care of each other, and we live with love for one another. And that includes not only the other people that live here on earth, but it also includes all of creation, all of the living beings that are here on earth. That includes the animals, the plant life, the celestial beings. We give thanks for all of those things still to this day, because those were the instructions that we were given when we came here, when we were made here, and He wanted us to live that way, those that He had made in His likeness. And I came here because I wanted to take the place of the faces that are still coming, mainly because they don't have anybody to speak for them. And I feel that I am in a position to speak for them because I am a mother, and inside my body are still those faces that are still coming. And I am a mother of 4 children, that they have to live on this earth when I am not here anymore. And they will have grandchildren, and they will have to ensure for their well-being. So I told you that I live and I grew up in a place called In the Pines, or otherwise known as Pine Woods, and it's along the Big Creek, and that's what our elders used to call the Cattaraugus Creek. And that is a main, huge life source. It is embedded into our culture. It is not anything that can be separated in any way. And it's really important that we take care of the future generations, because otherwise, what is the point living here on earth? What is the point if that we don't continue creation and think of the betterment for all of those children that still have yet to come? Is, superficial things such as money that is man-made and is actually an artificial concept has no weight when it comes to the livelihood of young children and living beings that have yet to come. So that's why I came here tonight, and I'm learning more and more about the history of West Valley, and I consider myself a water protector, not only because I'm a Native person, but because I wear many roles. I'm a mother first and foremost, and that is the main reason why I got involved in a lot of the situations that were over there at Standing Rock. And I think it's very important that we also stand up for what we need to do here in our own neck of the woods, because we can't live without water. We live in a place where we have the 3rd highest fresh water source in the world. We have 21% of the world's fresh water on the surface. And we have a history of resilience, our people do, because we have had to live through the situations of colonialism, with affairs being in the Department of War for the advent of the United States, becoming an actual country. We've survived termination policies, assimilation policies, pretty much any genocidal practice that you can think of. And now from I'd say about the 1960s on till today, we're facing indirect and direct genocidal practices by the way of infrastructure. And that includes the non-renewable energy and this man-made energy, which you call nuclear energy, which I don't see any good that is coming out of it. I don't see any good. There's wars waged over nuclear energy. There is expensive costs of cleanup and the expense of human lives and the livelihood of our living that is at the expense of this man-made energy. So I'm here to talk about the human environment, our relationship with our human environment, which is under the National Environmental Policy Act, which talks about the relationship of the people with the environment, including the cultural and social effects. So the main impacts that now we have to face is long-term health. It's been something that has been long-standing since West Valley was developed. And even before then, you know, when I hear the stories of the glue factory and tannery, anything that they can dump into the freshwater sources, it's beyond me why we would do that, because we need water to survive. And it's a growing trend of the United States to privatize water and to use water as their dumping sources. And we don't have the ability to create new water. We need it cleaned up, and we need a full cleanup. There's a contamination of significant cultural and historical sites. This is the only land that we have left that your government has pushed us onto, and it's the only, we have nowhere else to go. There's a degradation of cultural lifeways. Everything that makes us Okwetwe, everything that makes us who we are. Fishing, agricultural, hunting, ceremonies. You know, they're going to contaminate our maple trees that we give thanks to, the tobacco that we grow to send our, to do our prayers and send our messages up to the Creator, to let them know that to let Him and all of our ancestors know that we are still here doing our role here on earth. Our economy is at stake. Our ability to provide for ourselves, to get out of poverty when we're facing something like serious medical issues, mental health stability, foraging, food storage. It's like everything that makes us Okwetwe is threatened by, Okwetwe meaning true people, the native people of this land, is threatened by this West Valley project. So it's taken 37 years to get to the point where President Carter had issued the West Valley Demonstration Project to clear and clean up the site. And 37 years later, we don't have time to wait for phase after phase. And we have, I have minimal access to your paperwork, which is why I think we need a huge extension to understand the documents. But there's two alternatives. One of complete cleanup and the other one of buried waste. And over the course of 1,000 years, where we have the complete cleanup, was estimated back in 2005 to be 9.9 billion over the course of 1,000 years, and buried waste 13 to 27 billion. But that does not include the long-term effects of how the stewardship of the land, of taking care of long-term costs of the government, nor does it account for the stability of the positions of the government to come. We already know with this United States administration that our environment is at stake. We cannot risk that waiting to see what else is to come and what else is to surface with the governments that are to come. So we need a full and complete cleanup. We should not have to live like this after we've already been almost annihilated off the face of the earth. And the United States has a horrible reputation of, just with nuclear energy alone, burying it near places, burying it and treating it near places of indigenous lands. And also, it's bad enough what we did in throughout the 60s with testing nuclear bombs and everything over in the Pacific Islands, blowing entire islands off the face of the earth where indigenous people could not return to their homelands. It's time where enough is enough, and that we have to save the human race. It's not just about our coming faces that aren't just our coming faces of our people, it's of all of your people that are here. Everybody that lives on earth. We will fail to exist as a human race if we continue to contaminate our water over the expenditure of how much it could cost. We have money for other things. We should have money, got money for a big, huge military parade, and we're 21 trillion deficit. The money that can be found to create a higher amount that's spent on an annual basis.
And are you done?
It's gonna happen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, that was great. I must say, thank you, Ms. Jones, okay? Mary Jacobs, a bunch of people, oh, Mary, come on.
Hello, my name is Mary Jacobs. I live here on the reservation, obviously, and I'm downstream from the site. My property is right on the creek, and that's where I live, right there, right next to it, which is kind of sad. A couple years ago, they identified a couple hot spots down in my area, like near where Todd lives, near where Clarence lives, down that end. Those hot spots were identified, and they told us that we had an increase in levels. So I kind of asked, well, what does that mean? You know, and what was the actual levels? I was never really given that answer because I don't know why. You just didn't divulge that to us or what. So then I started to attend more of the meetings that we've had. I realized this has been ongoing, quite battle for quite some time. In the meantime, I was able to educate myself a little bit more about the process and what's been going on at this site. I realized at that time that the hotspot levels were probably related to the gravel digging in the creek right behind, on the property right next to me. That creek was actually dug up for the gravel and it disturbed the clay. The clay that is at the site, similar to what you have there, to encapsulate and keep that nuclear waste safe. That's under correct me, I'm correct, right? You use that to keep it there, contained. So our theory, which several of my neighbors kind of had the same theory, was that when they dug up all that gravel, they disturbed that clay that was now containing any of that waste that was down there has now been exposed. And now all of a sudden I got a hot spot right next to me. As Todd had mentioned, the area that I'm from is actually down the lower end of the res. I probably have a dozen people that I could name right off the top of my head since I've been down there that have died of cancer. 2 on each side of me. And myself, I was diagnosed with breast cancer after we were down there. So it has a direct impact on me, and it's really important that place needs to get cleaned up, a full cleaned up. And then my other concern is that I realized that they used the clay to encapsulate, to contain. But I also recognized too, and did a little research and understanding from some of my lectures, that there's actual organic chemicals natural ones that will actually erode away at the clay. And those are like, I believe it was like benzene and toluene. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they were. And I'm worried that, are those being monitored there at site? Because those are natural chemicals that we have. And if you're not monitoring those, there's also a possibility that that containment for what you have there could now be slowly being compromised. So what was compromised from digging down here could just be another form of erosion, compromising the containment that you have up there at West Valley. I would really like to have a full cleanup of the site. Also in the past few years, we've noticed that we've had a lot more storms and everything. Again, like I said, I've tried to educate myself. I tried to make sure that I can be up to date on what's going on and try to understand. I'm just a plain old person like everybody else, okay? So I want to try to understand so I kind of know what I'm talking about. But the other thing that I was brought to my attention, that a lot of the studies that you did on the erosion, so the plant is here, the creek is down here, and the natural erosion is going to go towards the water, you know, and your original studies that you did were like based on data from like 50 some years ago, so like a long time ago, whereas now we've had the climate change. We have that increase in that rainfall, and all those storms are slowly eating away at that land even faster. And you know, I think your original calculations were like maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like 150 years before it ever got up to where the containment site is. But now, because we're having so much more rainfall and everything else, it's probably going to take half that amount of time for it to get over there and erode to where the containment site is. And that concerns me, because again, if that's possibly got some leakage and you got those natural chemicals eating away at that clay, who's to say that now isn't going to come downstream and back behind my house again? I have a grandson, and he means the world to me. And when he has his kids, they're gonna be there, and that water may be contaminated. Those things may come down that creek, and now it may be him or his kids that end up with the cancer. And I don't want that. It's a long-term exposure. I mean, we know that from some of the studies already. The long-term, low-level exposure can cause this. You know, I realize that. A lot of the people, like I said, in my little community down there in Bucktown, we have a higher level of cancer. When I was first diagnosed, I'm actually a nurse by profession. My co-workers, they were very concerned, and we're trying to figure out, you know, like, you're a nurse, you should know how to eat better, take better care of yourself, you know, and I'm like, well, I thought I was. But I didn't have any history, you know what I mean? So they were trying to figure it out, and then when I went to Roswell, I actually entered into a study, and then they kind of came on board, but even before I came on board, they were already looking at this. They were trying to identify already, and I think it already was identifying more down the lower end of the reservation towards the end of the creek, which obviously goes into the lake. My other concern is that because the water flows downhill, okay, it's gonna come this way, and it's gonna go into the creek, and then it's gonna go into the lake. Has there been any studies or anything on the water life in the lake? You know, you can't eat the fish anymore, it's very limited. That's one of the main things that were in our diet. You know, all the water that comes in, we need it for our plants, because a lot of us have gardens, and that's what one of our main food sources is corn, and we value the trees. I mean, I really value my land, because we need that to survive, and we need the water. The other thing was my concern is the aquifers that was close to the plant now, to West Valley, and we are above a large aquifer here.
And
So if that
Mary,
comes here.
could you sum up for us
Yep.
too, please? Thank you.
So I just want to make sure that you know that I am requesting the full cleanup of the site and possibly an extension, because I know there's more people that need to come, and I'm sure they'd be more than willing to come and express their concerns too, and I know they would ask for a full site cleanup also. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, good.
Yep, written.
Thank you. Nicole Thompson. And I don't think Barbara Frankowitz is, she left, okay. So after,
I'm Nicole Thompson.
okay.
I'm a community member, and I'm a member of the Nondawaka Protectors, the Nondawaka people, the Hills of Seneca people. This is a humanity issue, humanity over money. This is my community.
Nicole, let me interrupt you so that we can make sure that the court reporter hears you.
Syphilis.
Okay, good. Give it a try.
Is that better?
Okay.
So this is my community. This is where I'm from. I'm not gonna try to repeat any of the cultural aspects that you've heard. I'm not gonna try to repeat the science. And I'm very proud of the people that are around me. I do want to share one teaching, and Clarence talked about, we give thanks to the people first, when we give thanks every day. So the people is all of the people. It's not, it's every race, every color, every size, every gender, every person, every disability. Every person, we give thanks to all of the people. So when these people are talking about this community and these waterways and the effects of it, we're looking at it for all of the people, not just our people, and not just the faces of the people to come, but all of the people, all of your people to come, all of your faces below the water and below the land. So I want everybody to understand that, and that water is our first medicine. If you know anything about the birth process, you were born and evolved, and your fetus was in water, your mom's water. So water is your first medicine, and it's the medicine that runs through. Nothing can live without water. This is a humanity issue. Did you hear all the emotion that was in this room? All the emotion. This is about people. The environment is our world. This is our universe, and we have a universal responsibility to take care of it. I go for the complete cleanup, the site-wide removal alternative, as you guys called it. Reclassifying the waste, definitely, because if the only place it can go is in New Mexico, then why don't you build another one? This transuranic waste that you guys were talking about. This is for all the people, all of the plant life, all of the animals, all of the birds, all of our universe, ours, collectively, everybody, not just mine. And please keep that in mind and go for the full site removal. Anyway.
Thank you, Nicole. Diana Beaver?
It's late, so I'm going to be very brief. I am for the full cleanup, and as I understand, there's a possibility of getting an extension, and that would be extremely helpful. And extremely helpful in that I need to learn a lot about what was mentioned today. I had an inkling of what was going on because this has been happening to us for a long time. Back in the 70s, our education department did a newsletter. It was one of the things in the newsletter about how pollution was coming down the stream, down the creek from West Valley. So there's a lot of things I need to learn, a lot of things I need to catch up on. And one thing that we've heard a lot about our values and our beliefs from many of our people here. And one of those values and beliefs that we have that has yet to be mentioned is that when we get together, we talk about pulling our minds together as one. And we do that so we can come up with the best ideas. And we don't pull things out of the top of our heads. We think about them, mull them over, and bring everyone together. All the people who were not able to make this meeting, they should be brought into the discussion. And with their minds, their best minds, we can come up with a great solution. So that's the main reason I asked for an extension. And I am in favor of the full, complete cleanup. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is use new technology and new systems such as the bioremediation that Jason was talking about, which is fungus and yeasts that actually have been known to reduce the radioactivity. That's Mother Nature coming back to help the mess that we made. Also things like drones for real time when we start in phase 1 to demolish the buildings, that we would like to have off-site air monitoring publicly reported in real time. That's the technology part. The extension part, yes please, because I noticed that the one thing that really hit me was the erosion that happened in 2009. And when I looked for that erosion report, that was questioned in the 2010 by NYSERDA, saying that we didn't have the technology then to do the full, should I say, a proper assessment of that, and it has still not been done. So we need an extension. We need to see reports like that. And the last one is to please do add the Seneca Nation as a cooperating agent. If we had done something like that in the first place, as you heard from all the speakers, maybe we wouldn't be in the mess we're in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Leah.